So, good evening, and welcome today to our discussion about case analysis. So we're going to discuss how to conduct a case analysis, and you may recall that we said there's 5 sections to our case analysis. There's a variety of different ways that you could do a case analysis, but we said that the 5 main sections, now each of those sections are going to contain a lot of subsections, but the main sections that we're focusing on include the problem. So a definition of the problem. What is the issue that the company is facing? What is the challenge? And once we've articulated that, then what we want to do is analyze the industry. So we want to look at key industry dynamics. What are some of those industry dynamics? We said the concentration of competitors, for example. So is the industry highly concentrated, or is it moderately concentrated? So for example, we said in some industries, like wireless communication in the United States, we said in some industries, 5 competitors dominate the market. So 5 competitors have, let's say, 85 to 90% of the market. Well, that's a market that's highly concentrated. If we had 100 competitors that made up 85 to 90% of the market, then we would describe that as a market that's fragmented. And we know that that's an issue because if the market is highly concentrated, then there's going to be a lot of price competition. So rivalry is going to be intense. So we could look at in the industry the 5 forces model that Michael Porter developed. We could look at the buyer power, the supplier power, threat of new entrants, the level of rivalry, and the threat of substitutes. Those are some key things that we could look at in analyzing a particular industry. So, in this case, we talked about the competitors and the level of concentration. That's going to have an impact on the level of rivalry. So the level of rivalry in Porter's model is going to be intense. It's going to be very intense. Why? Because you just have those 5 competitors fighting it out. Does that make sense? Yes. And everybody knows who those 5 competitors are. When there's 100 competitors in a given industry, you may not even know who your competitor is. No less who your direct competitors are and who your indirect competitors are. Remember we talked about that, the difference between direct competitors and indirect competitors? So we're going to do an industry analysis. Those are some of the things we're going to talk about. We're also going to analyze the organization, and one of the things that we're going to spend some time talking about today is a SWOT analysis. So as part of our organizational analysis, we want to do a SWOT analysis. We want to look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that exist for the organization. Once we've done that, as part of our case analysis, we want to identify the alternatives. What are the options? What are the choices for the company? So we know that they have a problem, we know that there's an issue that they're facing. What are some of the options for them? And then the final stage of our analysis is going to be, what are our recommendations? So what do we suggest that the company do? Because we should be putting ourselves in the position of the executive of that company or as a consultant. So as a consultant, what is it that we recommend that the company do? And we need to use facts that are in the case to support our recommendation, and also concepts and principles that we've learned this semester or that you've learned in other semesters. So it's about the application of marketing principles. Questions about that? All right, you can do it. Yes, you can. So let's look at the SWOT analysis. Let's look at the SWOT analysis for Hawaiian Punch. Anybody ever drink Hawaiian Punch? Anybody ever hear of Hawaiian Punch? Have you heard of Hawaiian Punch? Raise your hand. So that tells us that the level of brand awareness in our class for the Hawaiian Punch brand, the Hawaiian Punch brand name is very high. Because nearly everybody here raised their hand. So the level of brand recognition for Hawaiian Punch is very high in our team. What are some of the strengths for Hawaiian Punch? As an organization, Hawaiian Punch, what are some of their strengths? What do you think? Go ahead, Merlin.
It has a favorable brand association. It's linked with fun childhood consumption experiences and memories. It has a unique and refreshing taste. And the Punch mascot makes it a popular beverage among households of children under 18 years old.
We want brand associations to be strong, unique, and like Merlin says, favorable. So the associations between our brand and either other brands or other elements or other objects or perceptions, we want those to be strong. That's going to help define our brand identity. So in and of itself, our brand name may not be suggestive of what we do, the business definition. Remember we talked about that? The business definition, the mission, the vision. So we have to have our brand name associated with things to create that imagery, those perceptions. And Merlin says that, tell us again, Merlin, the brand association that's favorable for Hawaiian Punch is what? What is it?
It makes you about childhood consumption and memories.
So Merlin is saying is that there's a strong association between the Hawaiian Punch brand and childhood.
It brings nostalgia.
Yes, it's very nostalgic. So that's a strength for the company. Not all companies can claim that their brand is nostalgic, that it reminds people of their pleasant childhood memories. What else? What's another strength for Hawaiian Punch? Yeah, Luis?
The flavor is considered authentic and unique.
So the brand has favorable associations, and the product itself, remember that, what is the brand? The brand is what's wrapped around the product. So the product, let's say, is that square. The brand is what's wrapped around it. So we said one of the strengths is that the product is wrapped in some favorable brand associations, which is this nostalgia. But now, Luis says that there's also some strengths that the product itself has, namely the flavor. The flavor is considered to be unique and in some cases even considered to be authentic. So remember, we're thinking about sources of competitive advantage relative to the competition. What else would be a strength for the Hawaiian Punch brand?
It's the number one selling fruit punch in the United States.
The number one?
Selling fruit punch.
Number one selling fruit punch. Number one selling fruit punch in the United States. Certainly that's a strength. Who cares about that? Is that something that, or I should say, who cares more about that? The consumer or the trade? So remember we talked about push versus pull strategies? So in this case, how are we going to leverage that? So we said, okay, that's a strength. I agree. #1 selling fruit punch in the United States. How are we going to utilize that fact? What are we going to do with that?
Whole strategy?
So explain that further, Connie.
I would assume they have it on their bottles, right? And so if I was a consumer and I see that, I would want to buy it.
So, go ahead.
No, because it's basically the best product compared to other products that are similar to it.
So Connie is saying is that consumers are going to find that appealing. Why? Because other consumers are buying that product. So if other consumers are buying that product in such high quantities that it's actually the #1 fruit punch brand in the United States, then you also want to purchase and use a product that's considered to be the best. Isn't that so? You think that's going to influence your decision to purchase or not purchase the product? Well, everybody else is purchasing it. Well, maybe not everybody, but certainly those people who purchase fruit punch, they purchase more of Hawaiian Punch fruit punch than any other brand. And what about the trade? That's going to also help us get distribution at retail. So where is the product distributed? At a variety of different retailers. Some of them are mass merchants and discounters, and some of them are grocery stores, some of them are drugstores. For us to get on the shelf, because there's a limited amount of shelf space at retail, so there's a spot. And there's only a certain number of spots on the shelf. So the retailer can't carry every brand of fruit punch and every flavor of fruit punch and every brand of soda and every brand of iced tea. So they have to make a decision. And they want to select products that are going to have the highest level of shelf space productivity. So what is shelf space productivity? Remember, we were talking about the fact that a certain amount of space at retail, a certain amount of shelf space, is going to generate a certain amount of sales for the retailer. A certain amount of sales and a certain number of units being sold and a certain amount of profit, a certain amount of gross margin. So the fact that Hawaiian Punch is the #1 selling fruit punch brand, that's going to help us get on the shelf at retail. So when we think about market penetration, remember we talked about market penetration and market development and diversification and new product development. Well, in terms of market penetration, how are we going to sell more of our existing product? Well, one of the things that we could do if we consider a new channel of distribution is to get into more retail locations. So we're going to sell more of the existing product in the existing channels, in the existing market. Now, if we were going to try to sell, let's say, into a channel where we currently weren't selling, or into a country or region where we currently weren't selling the product, then that would be a market development strategy. But here we're talking about selling more of our existing product in the existing market. So it might still be a mass merchant or discounter, but it's a retailer that we don't have distribution at currently. So we're increasing the sales of our existing products in our existing market. What else would be a strength?
Research and development.
So their research and development. What So you want to elaborate on that?
The marketing manager, our director, she was just hired, and so she used, her approach to like market Hawaiian punches to look into like the consumer trends and basically invest in research.
Right, so fact-based selling. So Connie is saying that the new marketing manager there wants to do research and understand the trends in the marketplace and also the consumer needs and wants in order to grow the business. Anything else? Anything else that you would consider to be a strength?
And becoming part of Cadbury Schweppes.
Okay. So why would we consider that a strength? So Rafsan is saying they're becoming a part of Cadbury Schweppes. So Hawaiian Punch became a part of Cadbury Schweppes. Why is that a strength, Madalena?
Because they're already an established brand with other different products that are already out there, so people can trust them more with their products.
So the Hawaiian Punch brand is going to leverage the equity that's in the Cadbury Schweppes brand. So now they're part of that umbrella, that corporate brand, Cadbury Schweppes. So certainly there's some positive associations there, right, Merlin? Again, there's some brand associations. So now the Hawaiian Punch brand is going to be associated with the Cadbury Schweppes brand, which, depending on how they market it, is going to be relevant to the consumers or not, but certainly to the retail partners, because now that's part of the Cadbury Schweppes portfolio. So that's going to allow them some efficiencies in terms of how they bring that product to market. Do you agree? Now, one of the things that other companies have done, for example, to create a master brand, sub-brand relationship so that they could benefit from the equity of the master brand is, think about, for example, Butterfingers. Are you familiar with the Butterfingers candy bar? How many people have heard of the Butterfingers candy bar? Right? Who's their personality symbol? Bart Simpson is their personality symbol. And have you heard of the candy bar Baby Ruth? So those are a couple of candy bars that are not quite as popular as Snickers or Milky Way or M&M's. However, they were acquired by Nestle. So Nestle understood that those were not the number one selling candy bars. They weren't the market share leader. They had a very small percentage of the market, but they saw an opportunity. So they acquired those candy bars and some others and made them part of their portfolio. And then they did something that's quite compelling from a marketing standpoint. What they did was they put on every package the Nestle logo. So all the packaging for Butterfingers and for Baby Ruth show the master brand, in this case, right, they've utilized the Nestle brand as a master brand, and what in this case we would describe as a sub-brand. So they're marketed as Nestle Butterfinger, Nestle Baby Ruth. So now there's a very strong association, a very strong positive association between those brands, which have relatively low awareness compared to the market share leaders like M&M's and Snickers. And created an association with Nestle, which has a very high level of awareness, and has very positive imagery and has very strong favorable associations with it. So the attitude towards the Nestle brand is very favorable. People perceive the Nestle brand in a favorable way based on the research. Now that's all going to translate, it's going to be associated with those brands because of the co-branding. Another good example of that type of co-branding where you have this master brand, sub-brand relationship. Remember we said in a brand hierarchy, there's 3 levels. A corporate brand, a master brand, and a sub-brand. Connie remembers we had looked at a video clip about Marriott. So Marriott, what Marriott did was they acquired a group of hotels such as Residence Inn, Town Place Suites, and what they did is they changed the brand architecture. So similar to what Nestle did with Butterfinger and Baby Ruth, is now the brand architecture consisted of not just Residence Inn, but the Marriott logo. So the logo in front of the Residence Inn is the Marriott Residence Inn. So it's the Marriott Town Place Suites. So in of itself, I mean, probably just in this group, probably a lot of people never even heard of Town Place Suites. So if you were driving down Interstate 95 and you saw a sign for Town Place Suites from the highway, you may not stop. But if it says Marriott Town Place Suites, does that add some credibility to their brand? Like, well, that sounds like a place that's probably safe, for one, that's safe, and that's going to have some nice amenities. Now, this might surprise you, but the Marriott company also owns Ritz-Carlton. So they have this good, better, best pricing strategy. Remember we talked about that? Good, better, best. So the Town Place Suites is not an expensive place to stay. It's certainly not as expensive as the Marriott. But they also have Ritz-Carlton, which is a very expensive place to stay. But guess what? At the Ritz-Carlton, you can't find anywhere a sign that says Marriott. Why is that? Elena?
It's association, like a class level of how good the Ritz-Carlton is. It's like Marriott Town Suite is quite cheap, so they associate that with low class type.
So that elevates the Town Place Suites. So when you associate Marriott with the Town Place Suites, it enhances their image. But
That's
for the
what
Ritz-Carlton, it would actually have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So that the Ritz-Carlton, which is this ultra-luxury hotel, is, if we did associate it with Marriott, if we did co-brand it, then that would erode some of the equity that they have as a luxury hotel. Jimmy? Okay, good.
Is that an alternative to like, to brand elasticity? Like not to stretch the brand too much, instead create like another brand that's not associated to the main brand?
Absolutely. So they realized that there's only so far that you could stretch the brand. So what Connie is saying, why didn't they just come out, so they already have Marriott hotels, why not just come out with some Marriott hotels and just lower the price? So what Connie is suggesting is that, well, if we did that, then really there's some limits to how far we could stretch the brand. Now, if we did that, what we would be doing is eroding the equity that Marriott has as this moderately, it's relative, okay, relatively speaking, moderately priced hotel. But then Connie says, well, why did they bother acquiring the Ritz-Carlton? Why not just introduce Marriott hotels at that upper price point? Well, the thing is, in terms of positioning, you can't be all things to all people. So remember we looked at a perceptual map? So On a perceptual map, either we're positioned here or we're not. You can't be positioned here and also there. Our positioning needs to be crystal clear in the mind of the consumer, in this case. So, there's only so far that you could stretch your brand. Now, in terms of when we do brand elasticity research, we need to find out, one of the issues is, we need to find out how much the consumer is willing to pay for a product or service that's branded with our brand. So, in terms of the research, if we did this research, we would find out that consumers would indicate they're not willing to pay $550 a night to stay at a Marriott. $550 plus. But they would to stay at a Ritz-Carlton. So that's the issue, that's one of the issues about brand elasticity. We talk about, then we said, how far can you stretch your brand? Well, there's only so far that you could stretch it. The same reason why Toyota introduced Lexus. Because consumers said that Toyota's a good car, it's very reliable, it's high quality, but you know what? If I'm going to be up here in terms of price and quality, I'm not going to buy a Toyota. Because the competitive set is now changed. So they're saying, you know what, if I'm going to go to 75,000, 85,000, I wouldn't buy a Toyota. So you can't stretch the brand that far. Because they said, you know what, at that price point, the competitive set now includes BMW and Mercedes. Questions? Anything you want to add to that? You got Merlin?
Yeah, Toyota, they stretched their brand, but Kia and Hyundai took a total opposite strategy where they introduced a Kia at $60,000 with the K900, and Hyundai introduced a car that was there or something like that for $60,000. So they stretched their brand more.
So tell us more about that.
Well, Kia, Hyundai and Kia, they beat cars like Toyota, but they decided to introduce ultra luxury cars around $60,000, $60,000 to $70,000. Kia has a K900, and Hyundai, Hyundai has the Equus that starts at 65. So they believe, from their research probably, that they have a strong brand elasticity to go up.
Well, that's what that would suggest. Whether or not that's the case is something else, right? Because that's the issue with that Mercedes had. So Mercedes realized that, Mercedes is at this 100K price point. So if you want an S550, you're talking about $100,000 plus. But they realized that when you look at the market, they understood when you segment the market for automobiles, that you could segment the market, as we discussed, good, better, best, ultra luxury. But they saw how large that segment was, the moderately priced car segment.
Entry level luxury.
So if you segment this market, you segment the car market by price, what Mercedes was looking at when they decided to introduce cars at $29,999 is what?
Ceiling.
How big this segment is. So when they look at that segment, they see how large that is in terms of the percentage of the market. They decided, you know what? we want to be able to sell cars at that price point. They also decided that they wanted to sell cars at this price point. Which is, what's at this price point for them?
The Mercedes Maybach.
The Maybach. So they introduced the Maybach. Actually, that's kind of conservative. I would say it's more like $395,000 for a car. The Maybach. So what they decided to do, which is breathtakingly foolish, is they decided to create a new master brand for this ultra luxury segment, which is actually very small, even in the United States. Now the level of disposable income in the United States is very high relative to other countries. But even in the United States, this market for cars that sell for $400,000 is quite small. To create a new master brand that's going to have a high level of awareness, a high level of brand awareness, brand recognition, for example, is going to require substantial investment. So to be a power brand, to be able to create a power brand, you're talking about spending about $500 million. Why would you spend $500 million here to try and penetrate that tiny segment? When, to penetrate this very large segment, they decided to not introduce a new master brand. So the cars that they sell for $29,999 are branded Mercedes-Benz, and the cars that they sell for $99,999 are also branded Mercedes-Benz. Now, those people who are spending $100,000 for a Mercedes-Benz, do you think that they're okay with that? Because let's not kid ourselves. Sure, a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz is a luxurious car. It has high performance. It has a high quality leather interior, high quality wood interior. It has a high performance engine.
But people were buying for the brand, they weren't buying because of those characteristics.
So, as Connie is suggesting, despite what I just said, let's be honest with ourselves. People are paying for the status associated with this symbol, which is the Mercedes-Benz symbol. Well, now you could buy that for $30,000. Well, how much status do you have then? Not as much as before, because when people drive down the block, regardless of whether you pay $30,000 for your car or $100,000, they still see this. They still see the Mercedes-Benz symbol on the car. So you can't be all things to all people. So what they actually did was, in my opinion, IMO, in my opinion, what they actually did is they repositioned themselves. Remember, this is low quality, high quality, on a perceptual map, low price, high price. They repositioned themselves from here to down here. You can't be all things to all people. Either you're a luxury car or you're not. You can't be at every price point. You're at $30,000 and at $130,000. Well, again, we said that part of the reason people buy the Mercedes for $130,000 is because of the status that provides them. So it enhances their self-image and the perception that other people have of them, and people's perception of how successful they are. So they want to show that they could afford to drive a $130,000 car. And so, of course, now, mind you, they sold a lot of cars at $30,000, and executives there got multi-million-dollar bonuses. Why? Because they sold a lot of cars because the perception is that you're getting a $100,000 product for $30,000. So what is value? Value is a function of price and quality. Price and quality. It doesn't mean cheap. Something could be a good value and be very expensive. In this case, the perception is that you're getting something at a very high quality at a relatively low price. And it also, because they increased the number of units that they sold so dramatically, the number of cars that they sold, they were able to improve their production, the production performance, because they had excess capacity in their manufacturing facility. So one of the things that has destroyed car companies is the fact that they have a huge fixed overhead and excess capacity, but now they were able to utilize a lot of that excess capacity. So the company sold a lot more cars and made a lot more money. However, it wasn't free. They eroded some of the equity, some of their brand equity. So the Mercedes-Benz brand has equity in its brand of about $50 billion. Why? Because for decades they've been spending, well, over the course of decades they spent billions of dollars communicating that their product is a high quality luxury product. Now they're telling people that their product is $30,000. Because in all the print ads that you've seen over the last several years, what does it show? It shows exactly this, the Mercedes-Benz symbol and this price point. So what does that mean? What did Merlin tell us before about brand associations? Well, so that means that people are associating. If you want to reposition yourself, this is a good way to do it. Show your logo and your symbol and this price. Well, now you're $30,000. You're spending millions of dollars telling people that. Every ad that they ran over the last several years shows this symbol, not every ad, for this product line, right, that they're selling at $30,000. This symbol and this price point. So they're, in their marketing communications, they're telling us that their brand equates to a $30,000 price point.
Do you think a way they could have done it better is to have Mercedes-Benz logo and Toyota logo and have it at the best price point instead of the better price point?
Well, there's certainly other ways they could have done it. It could have been that they came up with a new master brand and then in the ads and commercials had something as simple as brought to you by the manufacturers of Mercedes-Benz. Right? So that's going to be a type of co-brand. If people are now going to associate, usually you don't see the corporate brand promoted. Like for Procter & Gamble, we said Procter & Gamble utilizes a strategy where all of their products have a different brand. But they're all produced by Procter & Gamble. And if you turn over the package, you can see in very small print it says Procter & Gamble, Cincinnati, Ohio. But in this case, what Connie is suggesting is, well, how could we use the corporate brand to enhance, do like what Marriott did, to enhance, and what Nestle did, Nestle Foods, to enhance maybe a new master brand that Mercedes would bring out. I think that would be one way certainly to address that. That this product is brought to you by the makers of Mercedes-Benz. That doesn't erode the Mercedes brand equity, or their positioning as a luxury car manufacturer. It says, yes, we are a luxury car manufacturer. And now, we also make Connie cars. So do you think we'll sell a lot of those? I think so. I think we'll sell a lot of Connie cars. Why? Because it's manufactured by the company that makes Mercedes-Benz. Sure, well, if they make Mercedes-Benz, then they must make a good Connie car. And it's only $30,000.
See logo.
Any more strengths?
I would add management. The way the marketing manager brought everyone together to talk about the strategy they want to implement.
So the management team. So they have a superior management team, has terrific leadership and management skills. That's a strength. That's a source of competitive advantage. Certainly that's why companies try to attract executives from other companies. They want to have the best and the brightest. Anything else in terms of strengths? Somebody? Anybody? What about the level of brand awareness? So they have a high level of brand awareness. That's a strength. We can do it. Yes, we can. Don't worry, we're only here till midnight tonight.
Their offerings,
So hang in there.
their product offerings, they have like 11 flavors.
So they have a breadth of assortment. It's not a retail orphan. They have an entire product line. Anything else? So they have a full product line, high brand awareness, an outstanding management team. They're now a part of Cadbury Schweppes, which is a much larger organization with much more resources available. They're investing in research and development. They're the #1 selling fruit punch in the United States, and their flavor is unique. Louise said that it's even considered to be authentic, and also we said that it's nostalgic, so it has some favorable brand associations. All this information was in the case. So when you do a SWOT analysis, you don't need to, for this assignment, do any research. You should be able to collect this information from the case itself. All right, so those are the strengths. Again, these things should be familiar to you. This information is in the case that's in the book. We could try and do some additional research, but for this assignment, we don't need to. I'm only asking you to identify the strengths that are in the book, or that are in the case. Now, what about the weaknesses? Good, Merlin?
The finished goods distribution is too costly and there's too many intermediaries are involved before the actual product arrives to the store.
All right, tell us a little bit more about that.
If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong now. First, they send a concentrate to the bottling network, and then the bottling network sends a finished product to a warehouse, and then the warehouse delivers it to the supermarket or out in outlets.
So the distribution is,
Serious.
yeah, it's too complex.
Yeah.
It's not a streamlined process. So speed to market can be a source of competitive advantage. So in this case, what Merlin is saying is, yeah, they're not quite there yet. Their processes are very cumbersome and is slowing the rate that they could get the product out the door.
I mean, they do have the other strategy where they go straight to the outlets, but they don't allocate as much resources into that.
So they can, in some cases, they can drop ship a product. So a product could be drop shipped. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll have, I work with clients who would have a pallet of the product drop shipped at the retail location. And I say, why would that be expensive? Because now what I just described is dropping it at a particular retail location. Because usually what's going to happen is the product coming from the manufacturer is going to be sent to a distribution center for a particular retailer, not an individual store. And then from that distribution center, the retailer is going to distribute it to their individual stores. They might have 50 stores, 100 stores. They might have 1,000 stores. But a retailer, a manufacturer might choose to drop ship the product and ship it directly to a particular retail outlet. Anything else? Yeah, Luis?
Another weakness is that flavor extensions are not popular amongst consumers. The extensions of it, like the other flavors, are not really popular. The juicy, what was it called? The fruit juicy red, it's like the most popular, provide a really wide margin, but it's really much more popular than the other ones.
All right, so this would be an example of a line extension. So what Luis told us is, well, there's the punch flavor that many are familiar with, but Hawaiian Punch also decided to introduce a series of line extensions. We're not talking about brand extensions here in Luis's comment. Because a brand extension would mean that we would be taking the Hawaiian Punch brand into a different category. What Luis shared with us is that they introduced other beverages, right, other fruit punches, but in different flavors, other than their traditional flavor. That's a good example of a line extension. Remember we talked during the semester about line extensions and brand extensions? So that's a good example of a line extension. Luis says, actually that line extension strategy is a weakness for them because those other flavors are not popular. Anything else?
Their competitors are well-known brands. So they would like categorize like number 4 the juice drinks, but the carbonated soft drinks are like the top competitors that they have. Like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Coke.
So in terms of the beverage category, there's different types of beverages. Milk, orange juice, fruit punch, soda, wine, beer, iced tea. And what Uma is saying is that, yeah, they face some pretty strong competitors. Because when you think about, now we would have to decide, in terms of how we define their business, who their direct competitors are and who their indirect competitors are. So consumers have a choice to either drink fruit punch, or to drink orange juice, or to drink soda. So if they're drinking soda, then they're going up, right? If you think about competition, they're going up against Pepsi, against Coke. These are the market share leaders in the soda category. When you think about carbonated beverages. But the point is that they're not just competing against other fruit punches. Consumers have a choice. They might decide to drink soda instead of fruit punch, or they're going to drink milk. So that's right, that's a weakness for them. So they're not going up against small competitors that don't have resources. These companies that are mentioned have a very high level of awareness, and they have a lot of money to invest to build their brand identity, to reinforce their level of brand awareness. So they have a lot of money to spend on research and development, on advertising, on promotions. So they could very easily outspend Hawaiian Punch. So certainly that's a weakness for them. You have to think about, when you're looking at penetrating or entering a particular category, who the competitors are. Who are you going up against? Maybe that's a barrier to entry in a particular category, because your competitors are so strong that they could always outspend you.
That could also be a flavor threat, also classified.
Yes, Elena?
There's also not a lot of like fruit drinks are not as popular as soda. I think it's like 4.something% of only are fruit drinkers. So not a lot of customer base to appeal to. Or it could be an opportunity where they could try to attract more people, but it's still a weakness when there's not a lot of
So the fruit drink category itself, so if we look at the beverage market the way we were just discussing it, so we have orange juice, milk, fruit punch, iced tea, beer, soda. So what Elaine is saying is this category, punch, this segment is actually quite small. It's a quite small part of the beverage category. Beverage category in the United States at retail is about $200 billion. What's the largest segment? Alcohol. 60% of the beverage category in the United States is alcohol.
To add on to that, because they're a small segment for Fruit Punch, their sales are going down.
Yes. So Connie said sales are declining. So when you think about their business, certainly that's a weakness, that their sales are actually declining.
I don't know. For me, I think that I don't really. It's not that I see it as their weakness, but I see it like it's more like it's an opportunity for them to develop the brand. Because if you look at their mascot, they don't really like advertising toward like adults. Like if you don't have a kid, why would you buy a One Punch if you're over 18?
So definitely that could be an opportunity.
It's like both.
So you're right, it's a weakness that the category is small for Fruit Punch, but that can also be an opportunity for them. You're right, it is small, but we're going to grow that category. Go ahead, Merlin.
The Hawaii Punch brand team that was assembled, they have no prior experience to the brand, and Kate Holdbeck does not have a clear vision or goal for the brand. She's just like, what's our positioning? And it's quite clear that they're in fruit, they're number one brand in Fruit Punch.
So the weakness, say it again, but we're going to...
No experience in the Hawaii Punch brand team.
But that's where the research comes in. Yeah.
So that, what Connie is suggesting is they're trying to counteract that by doing research. But at this point, that's a weakness, that they don't have that expertise. But they're aware of that. So when you go on an interview, so very often they'll ask you, what's your greatest strength? Now that's that should be pretty easy to answer and something that you feel good about answering. Then they're going to say, now, Kaya, what's your greatest weakness? And then you start to think, gee, what am I going to tell them?
My strength.
So, whatever weakness you tell them, hopefully it's not something too serious, but whatever it is, immediately following that remark, you could say, but being aware of that, I'm doing this to correct that weakness. So that's kind of what we're discussing here is Merlin is saying that's a weakness, and they're saying, yes, it is a weakness, and we're aware of that, and we're going to invest more in research. You agree? All right, so when you're on an interview, think about that. Make sure if you put something out there, don't just leave it hanging. You have to be able to communicate that you're aware of that issue and you're fixing it.
Don't get too personal.
Yes. All right.
Also gonna down like their strength is that they're very family oriented. A lot of Hawaiian punch drinkers are family with kids, and because there's a lot of family aspect, people do buy.
So they do have a very strong association with their brand
Okay.
and family.